Hello, everybody. Welcome to your first electronics activity. In this, lesson, I'm going to talk a little bit about safety and setup for how you're going to work with your electronics kits. We're going to make a circuit together, and I'm going to show you how to then actually wire that circuit together using a breadboard, and then we're actually going to connect that circuit to an Arduino and make an LED blank. This is your first hands-on work. Feel free to watch this at 2x. Feel free to watch things again. The reason we're doing this as a video is so that people can work at their own rate. Some people might know some of this stuff already, and so they can kind of skip ahead. Some people might need to take more time. And so you can pause. You can look up resources if something's not making sense. You should also be connected with your teacher. Make sure that you're connected to them via Google Meet, via Google Chat. They are here to help you. You can also connect with the other students, ask them questions. I'm sure some of them have figured it out. And so it's really about working together. So if you're somebody who knows how to do this stuff, make sure you're checking that chat. Make sure you're checking in on your Google Meet to see if you can help the other students who might be having some questions. So with that, let's get first off into safety. You should have a full kit of stuff. There's actually 2 different versions of the kit, so yours might be slightly different than mine, but they all have mostly the same things. Got a power source, a battery like this. None of the things in here are really very dangerous. And so, even this battery, if I touch both ends of this battery, I'm not going to get a shock. And so as I'm wiring stuff together, you really don't have to worry about getting a shock. Maybe later on, if we're building some sort of custom thing that needs some capacitors or some other electronics that we order, it might get a little bit more dangerous. But for now, with everything in this kit, don't worry about shocking yourself or anything like that. Go ahead and put stuff together, try it out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. The worst thing you could do is wire something up wrong, and your main computer, which is this thing right here, this is called an Arduino Uno. You could fry, the main chip on here, which is this big thing right here if you have this version of the Arduino. If you fry that, this thing is about $8. So it's not the worst thing in the world. Obviously, we want to try to hook things up right so, we don't end up breaking this. But if we hook it up wrong and we end up breaking it, it's okay. So don't be scared to just kind of go for it. And it's actually pretty hard to break this thing. You would have to hook something up really wrong in order to break it. So don't worry about it. Go for it. Try your best. Don't worry about trying stuff and getting it wrong. That's what a lot of, inventing, creating new stuff, you're going to get a lot of stuff wrong. So don't be scared of doing that. The other thing that you should definitely have is you should have your lab notebook. So I've got my lab notebook set up here. I've also started making some notes for today. So I've got my date. I've got what I'm working on. I've got kind of an agenda of some of the stuff that I want to get done. So make sure you've got your lab notebook. You've got a pen so that you can take notes on what you're working on, any questions you have, stuff like that. The other thing you're going to need is just your kit, which has everything in it. You might need to grab a pair of scissors to cut open some of the packages that look like this. You'll have to cut these open. But get familiar with what's inside. Like I say, you're probably not going to break anything in here. So don't worry about it if you do. It's not that big of a deal. The most important thing is that you keep trying different things. So that's really kind of how we're going to get things set up. That's make sure that you've got a safe spot to work. Main thing is, please don't put any drinks next to your computer because those have a tendency to spill over. So make sure you've got a table with your laptop, your kit, no drinks on it. You're going to be good to go. And so the first thing we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about making just a circuit. And so a circuit is, if we've got a power source like a battery, what we're going to do is we're going to connect one end of this battery to the other. And that's going to allow electrons to flow from one end of this battery to the other. As those electrons flow through this circuit, we can have them do stuff. We can have them turn on a light, or we can have them make a motor move, or we can have them do whatever we want. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to build a circuit. You're going to need a couple things. You need some clips like this. These are called Alligator Clips, and they just kind of open and close together. This is really just a wire. Inside of here is a metal wire that electrons can flow through really easily. It's wrapped in some plastic or rubber, and this plastic rubber, electrons can't flow through this stuff. So the red here, is an insulator. Electricity can't flow through that. And the metal here is a conductor. Electricity can flow through that. So what we're going to end up doing, we could create a circuit just by connecting this to one end of our battery and then connecting the other end to the other end of the battery, and electricity would be flowing through here. We would have our first circuit. However, it'd be kind of boring because nothing would really be happening. Just the battery might heat up. That would be the only thing that would happen. So if you do connect these two things, you'll drain your battery. All the electricity will end up getting drained out of here, but you won't be doing anything cool. So let's do something cool with this. So let's grab a couple of these. And one thing we're going to need is this. So this is an LED, a light. And all we're going to do is we're going to connect each end of this light to a wire. So I've got one wire here, and I've got another wire here. All right. So this is just basically one wire is attached to each side. So these are two separate wires I've got here. Now the other thing I'm going to need is I'm going to need a resistor. And so this is what the resistors look like. There's different sizes. Well, I mean, they're all the same size technically. But what a resistor does is it resists electricity flowing through it. So electrons are going to be moving through this wire once we connect it to the battery. And we want to slow down those electrons, you can kind of think of it. And so this resistor is going to slow it down, and that's going to keep this bulb from burning out. We don't want to burn out this bulb. And so we need to kind of slow down the electricity a little bit. And so we're going to use a resistor. And you'll see that you've got a few different packs of resistors. And if you look, there'll be little writing on the brown pieces of paper. These little writings tell kind of how strong the resistor is, or how much it's going to kind of slow down the electricity that flows through it. So the higher the number, the more resistance that resistor will have, the slower, the harder the time electricity will have actually going through it. And some of these have a K on it. So the K actually stands for 1,000. So 1K is 1,000. This one is 330. And the other kits, they're written in red. So this one says 10K. It's actually kind of hard to see, but 10K, so that's 10,000. So what we want to do is we want to find a resistor that's kind of between 200 and 500. In one of the kits, there's a 330. And in the other kit, there is one that says 220. Too bright, too dark. 220R, that just means 220 ohm resistor, so 220. So grab a 220 or grab a 330, depending on which kit you have. And you can just pull it off. I've already got one that I pulled off. And resistors, you really can't break these things. You can bend these wires however you want. You're not going to break it. And if for some reason you do, these resistors cost, a couple pennies probably. So we've got our resistor, and we're going to include this in our circuit. And to show you how this works, I'm going to pull up a program called Tinkercad. I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see. I know sometimes it's kind of hard to see how I'm wiring stuff together. So to show you, whenever I wire stuff together, and you will probably want to do this if you're showing one of your classmates how you wired stuff together, or if you're showing your teacher how you wired stuff together. You can hold up the stuff, but the cameras aren't very good. It's kind of hard to see how things are wired. And so if you go to tinkercad.com, you can create an account and you can sign into your account. I just sign in with my Google Gmail. And this is one of the places where you're going to go if you want to make something and 3D print it. That's usually what Tinkercad is used for. However, we're going to use it for something else. So yeah, so you can see I could create a new 3D object that I could send to the 3D printer. That's one thing I could do on Tinkercad, but really the thing we're going to look at here is we're going to look at circuits. I can actually make a circuit on Tinkercad, and this is going to let you see what I'm doing. And so this is, our first is going to be a pretty simple circuit. We're going to have a 9-volt battery. We're going to have a resistor, and we're going to have an LED. So now what we need to do is we basically need to connect these in a circuit. So we're going to need to connect them with wires in kind of a circle from one end of this battery to the other. And so the big end of this battery here, the top, is actually the negative. And there's one thing that I need to kind of explain about this LED. If you take a look at your LED, you'll see that one of the wires is shorter and one of the wires is longer. Now this longer end of the LED, this needs to get wired to your positive end of your battery. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a wire, I'm going to connect it to the long end of my LED, and I can connect that to the positive end of my battery. I'm then going to take another wire. I'm going to connect it from my short end of my LED. I'm going to connect that to my resistor. And lastly, I'm going to complete this circuit by taking the other end of the resistor and connecting it down to the negative end of my battery. I'm going to start the simulation here because I can actually simulate this. And you can see that on the computer, our LED lights up. So this is how I'm wiring it. I'm going to show you in real life here. It might be a little bit hard to see. But I'm going to do the same thing with my LED. So I'm going to take I'm going to figure out which side is the long end here. I kind of need to take a look. Okay, yeah, there's my long end. So I'm going to take my long, I'm going to connect that to the positive side of my battery. I can just clip that on like that. Okay. So now I need to go from the short leg of my LED, new wire. I'm going to connect that short leg to my resistor. I've got my resistor here. And the resistor, I can connect it to either end. Resistors don't really have a front or a back. They work both the same way. So all they're doing is, like I say, kind of slowing down the electricity flowing through them. If you think of electricity flowing through this, kind of like electricity flowing through a river, the resistor is kind of like rocks sitting in that river. They kind of slow it down, make it hard for the electricity to get through. Now I'm going to take one last wire. I'm going to connect that to my resistor, and that's going to go to the negative end of my battery. And I can clamp it on if I want, or I can just touch them together. So if I touch them together, I can see that. Yeah, let's pull it up here. I can just kind of connect it like that. And you can see I've got a circuit. It's a loop. It goes to my LED. My LED is on. One thing I want to be careful about here is if I touch these two things right here, you can see that kind of shorts out the circuit. So I want to make sure that those aren't touching together. So our electricity is flowing through here, and as it flows through this LED, that electricity causes this LED to emit light. And so we've got our resistor then. That's just kind of slowing stuff down. That's going to keep our LED from burning out. And then that goes back to my battery. And so this is basically what electronics is. It's taking electricity, using it, putting it through a circuit in order to do something. So in a more complicated thing, this might be like a pencil sharpener. And so the electricity might be turning a motor to sharpen your pencil. Or in an electric car, it might be turning the wheels of that car. Or on a computer, that electricity is flowing through that circuit and it's lighting up my screen. So lots of different things that we can do with this, but this is really the basics of a circuit. And now that we know how to do this, let's figure out, this is so awkward. Like, could you imagine like trying to wire stuff together using these alligator clips? They work, but there's a simpler way. And the simpler way, which is the next thing, is going to be using a breadboard. So all this breadboard is going to do is it's going to allow me to connect these electronic parts together, like an LED and a resistor, a lot easier without having to use these alligator clips and clipping everything together. All right, so let me show you a little bit about, I'm going to disconnect this so I don't drain my battery. So I want to keep this battery for later. I'm going to show you on the Tinkercad, again, kind of how a breadboard works, how we can use it to wire stuff together, and basically make the same circuit, but without those kind of pesky alligator clips. Hey, I'm presenting. Let's go back to our circuit board. And what we can do is we should be able to delete these wires. We're going to use these same parts, and we're going to use a new part. It's called a breadboard. And so you have one in your kit. You have a big one. You actually have a few. You have a big one that's actually longer than this, but we'll use this for now. And breadboards are a little bit confusing, so we kind of need to explain how these work before we're going to be able to use them to wire stuff together. And so what you need to really think about this breadboard is lay it out. Make sure you can kind of find this positive and negative. You can kind of find these numbered rows. And I kind of think about this kind of like bleachers next to a basketball court. So if my basketball court's over here, these are my bleachers. And there's like walkways where you can walk up the bleachers. And then there's the actual bleachers where you can go across. And so all this really is there are wires connecting these different holes along these bleachers right here. So people sitting right next to each other are connected. And each row of those bleachers are connected. Also, the walkways, up one walkway is connected, and up another walkway is connected. So if I take a wire and I run a wire from here to my battery, if I wanted to connect something to that wire, I would just need to put it in any of these other holes that are in line with it, because these are all wired together. You can't see it, it's underneath, but those holes are all wired together. So if I take my LED and I want to connect the short end to the negative, I could put the short end into any of these lines right here, and they would be connected. If I put my LED right here, it is not connected to this wire, because the short end is right here, and I want to connect it to my negative, I can't, right? So that's kind of a little bit complicated. It takes some time, it takes some practice. If I put my LED over here, even though my short end is in line with this, this LED is not connected to my battery at all. Let me zoom in here a little bit more. There we go. So my LED is not connected to my battery because it's across this kind of barrier, all right? So only things that are just right next, so there's basically 5 holes that are all wired together. And if I want to connect 2 things together, all I do is I put one into one of these holes, and I have to put the other thing into one of these other 4 holes. That's the only way I can wire things together. The other way is I could take this wire and move it, and I could put it into this negative. So now, if I connected a wire from this negative and I ran it up to here, now this LED is actually connected to my battery, because this wire goes to here, and so this is connected, so there's like a wire underneath here. This wire will then run the electricity up to here, and now it's connected to my LED. So now you can kind of run stuff along this way. So just think about that things are connected when they're in line like this. If I take my wire and I connect and I put it right here, let's see here. So now my LED is not connected to my battery, right? Because this is not connected, it's not wired together. So these two things are not connected. If I move my wire back over here, my LED is still not connected to my battery because my battery is connected to this line and there's nothing else connected to this line, so it's disconnected. There's no way that my LED is going to connect. So if you have, there's definitely lots more videos on how breadboards work. It's a little bit tricky. You kind of have to practice with it, but that's just a little bit of an introduction. And so let's go back and let's actually make a circuit that works. And so I'm going to delete this. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go from my positive end, just like I did last time. I'm going to connect that to the long end of my battery. To the long end of my LED. Now, this LED, I can bend the ends of this LED to go into any holes I want. It doesn't matter where I put this LED, but I just need to know where is the long end. So I know that my long end is going right here. So this is the long end of my LED. I need to connect this with a wire to the red of my battery. So the positive end of my battery. All right. Then I'm going to connect the short end. I need to connect that to my resistor. So to do that, I need to take my resistor and I need to plug at least one end of it into any of these holes that are in line with the negative side of this LED. All right. So if I plug it in right here, these are in line. So this resistor is wired to this LED. Now the other side of this resistor is now plugged into the other side. So this is not plugged into anything right now. There's nothing right here. But I want to get back to the negative end of my battery. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a wire. I'm going to connect that into any of these holes that are in line with that resistor. So I'll just put it right there. All right. Now what I can do is I can simulate this on my computer. I can see, hey, this is all wired together. If I remove this resistor, if I move this out of the way, or say I wired this to a different, can I move this? I should be able to. Let's just delete it, I guess. If I wired this up wrong, say I connected it, these two things are not connected. The circuit is broken right here. If I try, nothing's going to happen. My light will not come on. So I need to make sure that I wire these up in the right way, is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to show you this in person. It's going to be a little bit hard to see, but hopefully that makes sense. Let's go stop sharing. Let's pull up our meeting. There we go. And so I'm going to need my breadboard right here. I'm going to need 2 wires. And these 2 wires are going to be these short wires that have metal sticking out of the ends. This is going to allow me to put them into the breadboard. Connecting this to the battery is going to be a little bit hard, but I could just hold it in place. Later on, I'll show you actually how we use a battery like this and actually connect it. But for now, let's just we'll just hold this in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from the positive end of my battery, connect this wire, this positive end. I can just hold this in place, and I can put this into any hole I want on this main breadboard. It really doesn't matter. I just need to know that these going across are wired together. So if I stick this, and I'm going to stick this in 10. So I've got mine stuck into 10. Then I'm going to take my LED. And I know that the long leg of my LED needs to connect to the positive end of the battery. So if this wire is going to connect to the positive end of my battery, I know I need to stick the long leg of this LED into a hole that's in line with this wire. So there's 4 options. If I stick this anywhere else, there are only 4 holes that I can put this in and make this work. I have to stick it into one of these 4 holes here. That's right in line with that wire. So I've stuck it in there, and you can bend these legs as much as you want. I'm going to put the other leg, the short leg, into any other hole. So something that it maybe can kind of fit into easily, make sure that I've got a good connection. So I'm putting it into what you would call 12. So it's just a couple rows down. I know this is going to be hard to see, which is why I was trying to do the Tinkercad. And now there are 4 holes that are in line with that short leg that I need to connect another wire to. Oh, no, not a wire. Almost messed that up. We need our resistor. Where's our resistor? Because our resistor needs to plug in to the short end of that LED. So I'm putting it into one of those 4 holes that are in line with the short end of my LED. I'm going to stick the other end into any other hole kind of down the way. So I'm going to stick it actually into 20. So I've got my positive going into 10. I've got my long leg of my LED also going into that 10. Then the short leg is going into 12. Then my resistor, one end is going into 12. The other end is going into 20. And the last thing I need is one more wire that's going to plug into 20 and connect to the negative end of my battery. So I'm going to find my negative end. I'm going to make sure that that kind of connects to one part of the battery, and I'm going to connect the other end. And you can see, hey, it works. You can see when I disconnect, the light's off. When I connect, the light turns on. So we did the exact same thing we just did before. It's just that this is going to be a lot easier to work with, especially if we have a bunch of different electronics parts. We're trying to hold them all in the same place and wire them all together. We're going to use a breadboard like this. All right? Last thing for today is we actually want to make this light blink on and off using a microcontroller. This is an Arduino. So this is a computer. We're going to use this computer to actually turn this light on and off, to send electricity through this circuit for a second, then to stop sending electricity through this circuit for a second, then to send electricity through this circuit for a second, then to stop sending electricity through this circuit for a second. And so I'm going to show you how to do that right now. All right. To actually use this, it's pretty easy to wire this thing together. The positive end, we're going to put into one of, really any of these digital pins we can use. So this computer can control and send electricity out of any of these digital pins really easily. So I'm just going to use 7. It doesn't matter. I'm going to plug my green end, which was kind of on my positive side. I'm going to plug that into 7. And I'm going to plug the negative end of my setup. So this is the negative end of my setup. I'm going to plug that into the one marked ground, or GND. Let me show you. I can actually pull this up on Tinkercad to show you how I wired that, because I know it's hard to see. It's on my screen. All right, so let's actually take this off, because I don't need that. What I'm going to do is basically have an Arduino. Let's pull an Arduino up here. And so all I did is I took the positive end. So I took a wire from 7, and I put that, and I ran that to the positive end, so the long leg of my LED. Then the short end of my LED connects to the resistor. Then the other end of the resistor needs to connect back to ground, GND. So that's this thing right here. There's actually a few different grounds. I could connect it down here if I wanted to GND. Anything that says GND is going to be ground. That's going to be the negative side. And so this is going to basically complete our circuit. Just like we did, instead of having a battery down here, we have a computer that has power, and it can send power through this circuit, or it could not send power through this circuit, depending on what we want to do. So if we want to make this LED flash on and off, we're going to write some code that's going to basically have the computer put electricity out through 7, have it come around back to ground. So for a second, so this light will turn on for a second, then turn off for a second. It's going to do that forever. To program this Arduino, we need to go to a specific website. It's called create.arduino.cc. As always, feel free to pause. Feel free to go back if you need to. It's really fine. Feel free to play this at 2x if I'm talking too slow. Go to create.arduino.cc, and you're going to sign in and create an account. I've already got an account. And so once you have an account, you're going to go to this Arduino web editor. This is where we're going to write the code that's going to control our Arduino, that's going to tell it, where to send electricity and when. And so I've got my username and email already set up, so I can log in. You might need to pause the video right now, make an account, come back. If you just came back, hopefully you were able to go to the online editor for Arduino. And the thing we're going to want to do is write some code here. But the nice thing about Arduino is there's actually some examples. So we don't really need to write code because there's an example for blinking an LED. So if I go off to the left and I click on examples, it will come up. In Basics, I can click, and I can click blink. And all this does, over here, this is our code. So this is what we're going to put onto our Arduino. These are the instructions that our little blue Arduino computer is going to follow. And we need these instructions to basically let the Arduino know that we want to send electricity out of pin 7 for 1 second, and then stop sending electricity out of pin 7 for 1 second. So that will turn the light on and off. We want to repeat that over and over again. If you ever see anything on this Arduino that's in this light gray, these are just instructions. These are really for us, the humans, to understand what's going on. The computer, when I put this onto our Arduino, the little blue computer, it's not even going to read any of this. So this is just for us to know what's going on. Same thing, if there's these 2 dashes and you see that this is light gray, this is just for humans. The only code that the computer is going to read is the stuff that's in color. So the computer is going to start reading this code right here, void setup. And what this is basically telling the computer is, how do we want to set up? And so for our demonstration, we actually want to switch this pin mode. So we want to set, instead of LED bulletin, oh, it makes me want to save this. Blink copy, that sounds good to me. Let's save it as blink copy. This is the nice thing about doing this online, is that it's updating and it's saving stuff, and so you don't have to worry about if your computer crashes or something. So let's go to LED built-in. We're just going to switch this to the number 7. So now all this is saying, it's basically saying number 7 is going to be an output. So it's going to be a place where we're going to send electricity out. This is just giving the computer some instructions. And now the rest of the computer program is right here. All of this stuff off to the side is just human instructions telling us what's going on. So this is basically instructions. Turning the LED on is high. Turning the LED off is low. So instead of LED bulletin, which is actually a built-in light on the computer, I'm going to switch this to 7. This delay right here this delay of 1,000 is telling us how long it's going to wait. So it's going to turn it on high, which is basically going to say, send electricity out of number 7, wait 1 second. Then turn electricity off of number 7, wait 1 second. This is 1,000 because this is actually in milliseconds. So 1,000 milliseconds is just 1 second. If I wanted to change this, how long I wanted it to be on or off for, I could change these numbers. So if maybe I wanted to actually have it on for 2 seconds and off for 1 second. So I can change up those numbers, but the next important thing is we have this code written. This is enough instructions for our computer to know where to send electricity, how long to turn the electricity on for, how long to turn it off for, and then it's going to loop this over and over again. Arduino always has this same setup where there is some initial instructions for the computer, and then there's some sort of loop that just runs over and over again. There isn't really an on and an off. There's just a program that and there's only one program, and it runs over and over and over again. So we don't have to worry about, starting up the Arduino or shutting off the Arduino wrong. Like, we can just plug it in and unplug it as much as we want because it's really simple. It just runs one program, that's it. So we need to now get this program from our computer onto our Arduino. For that, I'm going to show you. Let's go back to this. I'm going to stop presenting so you can see. So you should have your Arduino already plugged in. 7 into the positive, the long leg, resistor, back to ground. All right, so this is set up. Now we're going to need this cable right here. This is our USB cable, and we're going to plug this into our computer. So one end gets plugged into the computer. The other end, the B side of this, is going to get plugged in to our Arduino. And you should see your Arduino some light should come on. It should kind of start blinking some stuff. And so now what I'm going to want to do is I've got this connected, but your LED light shouldn't be blinking. To do that, to actually get it to blink, we need to put that code that we just wrote, we need to put that onto our Arduino. To put it onto the Arduino, we got this. You got this, I got this, we all got this. We can do this. We can make this LED light blink. It's gonna be cool. Just you'll see. It's gonna be cool. We need to go to our Arduino editor. Now, I've plugged in my Arduino before, so my Arduino automatically loads up. Yours might or might not. If you're having trouble, you might need to install, it might ask you to install some sort of program to help connect. If you have questions about that, let me know or let one of your teachers know. But there should be an option up here. Yours will probably say Arduino Uno COM 3 or Arduino Uno COM 4. Mine's a little bit different because I'm on a Mac. But yours should connect it to whatever one looks good. And now, to get this code that we just wrote, to actually send it to the Arduino and have the Arduino use it, we're going to press the arrow button. So I'm going to press this arrow, and hopefully this works. We can see down here we should be getting some messages down on the bottom telling us what's going on. If something goes wrong, there might be some error messages down here. And we'll talk about dealing with error messages later on in our next session. But hopefully you've had some success. If you didn't, reach out to another student, reach out to me, reach out to one of your teachers, ask for help. Let me see. I hope you are stoked right now and that your LED is blinking. 2 seconds, well, because I set mine to 2 seconds on and 1 second off. If I wanted to change this code, if I wanted to have it blink really fast, I could have it blink really fast. I could have it on for a certain amount of time or off for a certain amount of time, whatever I want to do. But you can just see this is just repeating over and over again. If I want to stop, easiest thing to do is just unplug it. I can't break it. I don't have to go into like shutdown mode or anything like that. I just unplug it. Hey, it stopped. If I want, I can take my battery. Let's see if I can do this quick. I'm going to need to find what the battery connects to. This is the actual power for this battery. And we can power up our Arduino. So we don't, this thing has this chip right here, this thing is just a little computer. And so it saved that program on this little computer. And if we provide this Arduino with power, it'll run whatever program is saved. We can only save one program at a time. So if we want to make changes to this program, we have to connect it back up to the computer, send that to our Arduino, and then it will erase the old program, right? So we can only run one program at a time. But that's kind of why this is so nice, because it's so simple. It only runs one program at a time, and it loops that program over and over. I can just start it up, plug this thing in. If I plug this thing in, you should see that it's just running that program that we installed onto this chip. And so this is not connected to anything. It's not connected to my computer. I'm just rolling. And I can do this. So now, think about what I could do with this besides just making lights light up. I can make motors move. I can make arms or fingers clenched together. I could make lights, or I could, do something else with this electricity. Whatever you can do with electricity, you can do it. And you can control that electricity with this Arduino, which is really cool. So this is going to give us some options, almost an infinite number of options of what we want to build. And so that is your first Arduino electronics invention activity. I hope you were able to follow along. I hope you did something wrong and you had an error, and then you went and you looked on YouTube, or you asked a friend, or you asked a teacher, and you figured it out. Because that's what's going to happen over and over. Especially when you're first getting started, you're going to make mistakes. You should be pushing yourself to that limit of like, I don't know what's going to happen. I've never done this before. Let's try it. And it's probably not going to work the first time. And then you're going to have to go and you're going to have to research. You're going to have to figure it out. You're going to try it again, and it's not going to work again. You're going to try it again, and it's not going to work again. Then eventually, you're going to try something. It's going to work. And you'll be like, man, I just spent an hour trying to figure this out. I just had this one thing wired wrong, or I just had this one piece of code that wasn't quite right. But that's okay. That's the whole process. That's what invention is about, is trying to figure out, how to, when you come up with a problem, trying to figure out how to solve it. And so I hope you had fun, and I'll see you in the next activity.